WV Uncommon Place. This podcast is a variety podcast that houses numerous series to cover mental health, empowerment, podcast framework, and various intimate theories to get to know the hosts. Along with occasional movies reviews and dives in pop culture with our event podcast episode. The Uncommon Place digs into bringing guests on that stories don't fit the mold and are very different. WV stands for the great state of West Virginia, and every quarter we cover something in West Virginia. Stacey and myself, JR, are your hosts, so please come along for this venture to our Uncommon Place.
Greetings, everybody. I'm JR, and we all know that I've hosted this show for a long time. And when you have a guest on your show that has a very, very famous name, and the name is tied to a movie, and we know the movie, but the movie is not the guest. Sarah Marshall's her name. And you have to be careful because everybody remembers forgetting Sarah Marshall. It was a cult classic and then became more than that in life. But would you imagine in life you could meet somebody that has lived many lives, a military, firefighter, martial artist, engineer, activist, and then one portion, a seeker. Being a seeker is something that I want you all to be enlightening in all the other facets too. And then I forgot to add in author. I don't know why I forgot that one. But today's guest is Sarah Marshall. I'm going to pass this along to Sarah Marshall, and what I would like you to do, if you don't mind, and this is a hard one. I need you to, before we learn anything about you, anything at all, I need to know something that either a grandparent or a family member taught you that is not your parent. And it's a reason why we do this.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for having me, JR. I'm really honored to be on your show. And the Sarah Marshall thing, I don't know if you remember, the marketing for that didn't say anything about a movie. It just said, "You do look fat in those pants, Sarah Marshall. My mother always did hate you, Sarah Marshall." I almost needed therapy after that.
Oh, Lord.
So great. Nobody's ever asked me that question about what my lineage has taught me. It's really interesting that I look white and have had a relatively white life. However, part of my family comes from Native American roots, from the Ojibwe clan up in northern Minnesota. And one of my aunts, who is just she would just cuff me around the head psychologically almost every day for the foolishness that I would pull. She was very much reminding me of the heritage I came from, and that I was representing something more than myself. And that has, when I'm out in the world and I'm doing what I'm doing and I'm making the choices that I'm making, I know that I'm representing something more than myself. And so I have to think about how I would answer to my ancestors for the life that I'm living. And that drives me every day.
All right. Now, from the moment I met you, you had a little smirk on your face. When you mentioned that aunt, you had a different smile, like your eyes opened up a little bit more. So that right there in the video format here, anybody that gets to see that part, you're going to notice something. That is the human process right there going. That showed your first sign of being happy. So I appreciate you doing that for me. That right there showed that you're not a robot, an android, or anything like that. Because what happens when we do these shows, and we've been doing them for so long, and you've been doing them for so long, obviously today, we become mechanic. We become autonomous. That's what the best word to play. So I just wanted to make sure there wasn't nothing going on there, and you hadn't went off on me there. Now, tell us about your life. Let's go back to the early days. Let's go back to the first memory of your family. Explain to us what the structure was like.
Yeah, first memory, I was born and in my very early years raised in Hawaii. And my first memory is of leaving Hawaii, that packing up with my family to come to California to live in the mountains, and departing this kind of paradise place to go into the unknown. And because of that, and because of my unique heritage, where I've spent a lot of time in a small mountain town in California and a fair amount of time on a reservation in South Dakota, I have this unique sense of not fitting well anywhere and fitting just as well everywhere I go. So that sense of departing that early place where I was growing up and then coming to this world that I grew up in for the rest of my life, always gave me that sense of I don't fit and I do fit just as well everywhere.
Okay, so audience, I'm going to take it a step further. Imagine you have a USB flash drive and you can plug it into a USB-A port, but you can add an add-on and turn it into a type C. But regardless, you can plug it into a computer anywhere. That is you. Now, we get into your formidable years. You go through, you start the early parts of your education. And when you're starting the early parts of your education, what caused a pivot in life for you? And the reason I ask you that is, for me, in education, when I was growing up, I'm from the great state of Virginia. I'm from a lowly little town, Rustburg, Virginia. Let's just say I'm from Lynchburg, Virginia, Jerry Falwell town. What was formidable for me, or what pivoted me, was once I learned how to read. The minute I was able to read, no one could ever put a cap on my mouth or my mind.
Yeah, very similarly. I was bright, very bright. I was also very undisciplined. So my schoolwork would sometimes raise and sometimes suffer, but the reading part, I was always reading something. I just voraciously read all my youth and into my early adult years, and even my later adult years, although the topics changed from fiction to nonfiction, et cetera, et cetera. But that ability to read and grasp beyond what my world was opened up whole new worlds to me that I wanted to go out and see. I didn't want to just read about them. I wanted to go out and experience the smells and the sights and the people and the local customs.
Okay, so adolescence comes along and you start developing part of your arc. And the reason I say that is because we all, for some reason, I want to say mine happened, and I don't like to just throw me in here all the time, but I like to, with what I've read about you, about 12 for me. That's when I became this really definitive person that I knew I was going to be a healer. People come to me and I can heal. We can talk it out, but I'm an active listener. I don't have to react. And I got that skill at that age. So what went on in adolescence that carried on into your adulthood?
So this is a very, very insightful question. And for me, there was a big shift in both in positive and negative directions. I was a sensitive kid and very empathetic with other people. However, when I hit that point in my life, and you're talking about early adolescence, my body did something that most people don't experience, and that's my body betrayed me. And it betrayed me because internally, since I was very young, I knew that I was a girl, but my body was taking me in the wrong direction as I went into early adulthood. So I had this real sense of empathy for other people and this deep, dark secret that I was keeping, and this anxiety turning into rage as I grew up into my teenhood. And that both of those things marked me very strongly.
Okay. Now, as a teenager, we have rebellion. That's the theme of everybody's life. And the other thing is, and we don't always talk about this, there's the rebellion and the rejection. How did you handle both of them through the teenage years until the day you left high school?
Yeah, so my dad wasn't really around, and my mom completely leaned on me from when I was very young. So I was the responsible one. I was the oldest. I was the one that took care of my siblings. I was the one that my mom depended on, and I resented it deeply. So while being the good kid, I also was coming to the end of being willing to be that load-bearing person for the family. And by the time I got out of high school, I was done. So the way I rebelled was I left. I rode my bicycle from Central California all the way up to Seattle. I hitchhiked across Canada. I ended up running out of money and digging ditches in South Dakota and went into the military. So in essence, I ran away from home and never went back per se. I mean, certainly visited my family and that sort of thing, but I left and never stayed tied to where my upbringing was.
Okay. Now, you did all this, but something seems like you took accountability and responsibility somewhere in life because you went to the military. Was it a last ditch effort or was it because you knew that you needed some type of structure?
So there's a little bit of both. You had mentioned all those things that I did, and I would say all of it: the military, the martial arts, the diving, all those physical firefighting, and even going to engineering school was about sublimating my anxiety about myself because I knew I couldn't tell other people that I was trans. So the way I dealt with it was kind of like watching men and saying, well, that guy is really respected, et cetera, et cetera. I'm going to put the coat on of that guy and I'm going to look like that. So everything I was doing was a sublimation, trying to look like the guy that the world wanted me to be. And I was very effective at it and very miserable the entire time.
Okay. Now, you get to a point in life, you've done all the disciplines on earth, literally, to structure yourself. But you have this heartache, you've got this emptiness, this void that you have to personally fill. And in filling this void, you have to let go of some things. You got to shed a layer of yourself that's not you, right?
Yeah.
So at what point did you decide to do that? When did you decide to shed your layer and live your true life?
Yeah, it was after getting the beautiful wife and the beautiful home and having the job. At the time, I was director of operations of a biotech company. So I was very ambitious. Everything I did, I tried to do to the hilt and do the best at so that I was always seen as the person to go to, the guy to go to. And even though I had all that in a really loving relationship, et cetera, I just was dead inside. And the thing that happened was I went with a friend of mine to Mount Shasta to climb Mount Shasta, which is a big mountain in Northern California. And we got about halfway up. We were on this ridge and I was leading. And he said, this doesn't look very good. It's really precarious. Ice and broken rock, et cetera, et cetera. And I said, I'll just stay in the boot prints. We should be fine. And no more than a couple seconds later, the entire section of the ridge I was on sheared off. And there was nothing stopping me from dropping 1,000 feet. I threw up my ice axe to try to give myself some kind of a rudder down so that I might not die. But when dust cleared, I was still hanging in the air. And I looked up and my friend had somehow anchored in, caught my wrist and was holding me in the air straight up 1,000 feet up from the scree below. And he pulled me up and my reaction was, nice catch, Bill. I was very casual about it. We ended up going back down. I told somebody else that story a couple months later, and he said, that's crap. That there's no way you had that reaction. That's bravado. And I realized that there was something really wrong with me that I couldn't, and this was in my kind of, I think 33, 34, right in that area. And I realized that even though I had been suppressing all this stuff inside and looked like I was very successful, I was kind of dead inside and it just didn't matter whether I lived or died. So I was kind of dealing with that. And at the end of the year, I used to write down my goals on January 1st and check them off at the end of the year on December 31st. And I realized my last objective I hadn't done and realized that it was in my objectives the previous 2 years, and that was be more intimate with my spouse. And I went home and said, hey, I think I'm going to start therapy. And my spouse at the time was like, that's great. You really need it. Oh, no, because she knew that I had all this stuff going on. So she suspected that as soon as I got into therapy, my life might shift forever. And within 3 weeks of starting therapy, I knew that I had to transition.
Okay. And in doing that, it caused some hurt. It caused some anger and frustration amongst yourself and your spouse
And friends
and
and workers, co-workers, yeah.
coworkers, society.
Yeah.
Society took a part of your life and paused it for a moment because they didn't understand. When did you feel there was not a need to give an explanation to every Tom, Dick, and Harry and Mary that you were yourself now?
What a great question, because really, if you're not trans, there is no way you can understand what it is to be trans. You can only just understand that you're not living your true authentic life and that you need to be able to do that. So it actually took a number of years. I remember early on, after I transitioned and I was kind of telling people and kind of being really gentle, one of my friends said, "Why are you apologizing for being yourself? You should just be yourself." But I had such internalized transphobia that I didn't know how to just be okay. So that took years of therapy and personal development work and continued exploration of who I am as a human being to get to a point where I literally don't care whether somebody's okay with me or not anymore. I just do what I do and they get to be however they are around it. But that took years of discharging that internal transphobia and the stuff that was going on internally.
Okay, and I appreciate you for telling that an audience that part of the story that we've gotten thus far is one of the most important arcs, as I keep going on about in this story, because that is the hardest process. And even I can have sympathy and empathy, but I cannot fully grasp it.
Right.
And to know that you had to live a lie, would you say 35 years plus, or?
Yeah, it was, well, I think I finally came out. I mean, I started telling people in that period, and then I eventually came out at 37. But yeah, it was during that period, that's when I started actually admitting who I was. And
So
it
basically
was terrifying.
So not middle age, but like you were right there and you had already built a life and had everything structured. That's the best way I can put it. Structured. And then you had to realize that wasn't your structure, that wasn't your build, that wasn't your composition. And that composition, that's something I can understand because people reinvent themselves in certain ways, but at such a level that you had to, it was more than a reinvention. It was a phoenix rising out of the dust. Now,
yeah, it's super interesting to be what everybody thinks is a success. Oh, that successful man, look how great they are. And then realizing that wasn't sufficient, that I actually had to be this person regardless of what I would lose in the process.
Okay, so you get to a point, you start transitioning, and over a period of time, you realize that you're going to become an author. You decide to write a book. Playa Dust in My Soul. Or Playa.
Playa, yes.
Playa. Sorry about that. Playa Dust in My Soul. It took you 20 years to write this book, correct?
Yeah, a little over 20 years, yeah.
Okay, so what kept pulling you back? What was the writer's block, or what was the psychological warfare? That's what I really want to know. What was the psychological warfare inside your mind? What was the physiological thing that stopped you from moving in the direction that needed to have the typewriter, the pen, the computer? What made you not want to comprehend who you were?
Yeah, there was two competing issues there. The thing that drove me to start writing it and create the story, which was my first experience at Burning Man and just how much it changed my relationship to my own identity. And I had a sense there was a story there very early on. However, that became more and more clear over the next couple of years that there was a story there that was worth telling. However, what held me back, what the struggle was, is I had no skills as a fictional writer. Like that, I have decent skills as a business and technical writer. I could do that all day long, but this was telling a story. So my initial cut at it was to put so much information on paper, so to speak, that I had this mountain of information that, like a sculptor looking at a rock, I needed to carve a story out of it. And it took me the full 20 years to develop my capabilities and skills in a way that I could carve that into an art piece rather than just a rough figure. And I didn't want to release the story into the public realm until it was ready to be read. And that just happened at the end of last year.
Okay. Now, what I need you to do real quick, we need to take a step back. Burning Man. Can you please enlighten the audience that doesn't know what that is? Because Burning Man, they could have thought you went to some place, had a seance, and there was a burning man, or you saw something in the desert that was burning.
Yeah, that's it. The problem with Burning Man is you either don't know anything about it, or most people don't know anything about it, or you only know the headlines, the spectacle of Burning Man. And neither one of those are a great place to start when you're trying to understand it. So Burning Man is an event that happens the week before Labor Day every year. So the last week of August ends right at the beginning of September. And it's an event that literally, it's called Burning Man because on the Saturday of the event, as you're there for a week, and then on the Saturday of the event, the man burns down. And everybody gathers around it, watches the man burns, parties, et cetera, et cetera. And the meaning of that man burning down is left to be personal to every person that goes there. So when I first went there was about 18,000 people in the beginning of 2000. Now it's more like 80,000 people, and it's the fourth largest city in Nevada for a week. And so it's this event that is, if you love art, there is the most wild art possible out there, stuck up in the middle of the desert, in the middle of nowhere. And this event happens in the most remote desert in the United States, the Black Rock Desert. And it's a big, like, if you've ever been to Salt Lake City and seen the Bonneville Flats, it's like that, except it's 100-mile flat plain of playa that's dry, no weeds, no dust. I mean, lots of dust, no weeds, no animals, no birds, no nothing except what we carved out there to have the event. So Burning Man organization structures it, that has city streets, et cetera. And then all the people come in and populate the real estate within the grid and turn it into a living city that has just an incredible level of things that you can do and things you can interact with. And I know we'll talk more about that, but that's generally the event. It's an event that happens every year. It's under the constraints of 10 principles, and the principles deliver this amazing event that you can't possibly describe in a paragraph to anybody, because it's so many things to so many people.
Okay, I appreciate that. Now, writing this book, it's helping you develop the skill to not be a technical writer, but to be a fiction writer. Yep. As far as going on with that, you have your daughter helping you with the artwork, and you're telling a deep personal story, and this creative collaboration you're doing with your family. How does this bring you together as a family?
Yeah, so I'm still very close with my ex. We divorced after I transitioned, but we stayed close. We had our daughter in common, and my daughter grew up. She first went to Burning Man when she was 5, and has multiple times over the years gone out there. She's now 27. And during the course of that time, I was writing on this book and working on it. And she eventually wanted to read the manuscript. And bless her, she read an early version that needed a lot of work, but she stayed with me and became very committed to telling a real story. So when I would write something and she would read it about a particular character, she said, that character wouldn't do that, then blah, blah, blah. And so I would have to revise it to have the story be in integrity with the characters. So she was very much the heart and soul of the book, as well as she did all the art, the internal art to the book, and the picture on the cover is her. She took that picture.
Okay. Now, your novel centers around second chances and belonging.
Yes.
So, for listeners who feel like outsiders in their own lives, what do you hope they take away from your story?
So the story takes place in a way to give a 360-degree view of Burning Man. And what I mean by that is I have 7 primary characters, and each one of them come to Burning Man with a very different perspective. One of them is working on what's called the Department of Public Works, the DPW crew that builds stuff early, so part of the Burning Man organization. Others are brand new and have never been out there. There's an artist who is building a sculptural installation out there. There's one that has built a big art car and is sharing it with the world. There's another one that's doing a really big village presentation, because there's no buying, selling, or bartering at Burning Man. There's only giving things away. So you bring what you need to take care of yourself and then something to give away, a trinket, service, or you can form a big camp and provide something really big. But it's all about being generous. So these characters all come in from different angles and have different experiences. All of them are broken when it comes to belonging, and they all have to deal with what belonging means to them and how it changes them through the course of this event.
Okay. So with belonging, you need acceptance. Acceptance in some light, and this is a big thing even in our society, acceptance comes in many different forms. How did you finally get your acceptance?
So this is the crux of the book.
Okay.
When I went out there my first year, and I have a trans character in the book that it's not exactly my arc that was out there, but there's a lot of me in that character. And there's a lot of me in all the characters, but particularly her. What happened was I went out to this event completely unprepared. I was certainly prepared to be in extreme conditions all over the world and didn't mind enduring all kinds of things. But what I wasn't prepared for was to be in a place that that was so accepting that my core identity, that thing that I had in front of me, that I was trans, and so I was separate and different from everybody else, and I couldn't quite connect. That I didn't realize, it was unconscious, but it was in the way between me and other people. And I went to this event, Burning Man, where being trans was not even that interesting. It was not the thing that people wanted to know about me. They wanted to know who I was at my core. And it completely exploded my worldview because I was living my life, being separate from everybody and having no way in. And what I realized is the reason why I was so separate is because I wasn't putting my arms down and letting the world come in. I was busy keeping the world at bay. So when I realized that, is the very point you were asking about belonging, is there's 2 parts to that. One is the invitation to belong, and the other is the acceptance. I was in a world of 18,000 people that were inviting me to belong, and I was busy not accepting the invitation. It took me all week long to finally accept the invitation to belong.
And that acceptance is the hardest thing, because people, like you said, you tend to know the invitation, but if you can actually accept it, and I thank you for that. Now, tying more into Burning Man inside your novel, one thing we like to do on this show is we like to do a shameless plug. Can you tell the audience where they can meet and greet you across the internet and where they can pick up your publication?
Well, I have a pretty wide footprint, both professionally and for the book, but the easiest way to get to me is go to my website, Playa Dust in My Soul, all one word, and Playa is spelled Playa. So Playa Dust in My Soul, all one word.com. And you can find me there.
Okay. And one other thing that you can do is once you purchase this book, you can take the ISBN to your state capitol library. And this is something a lot of people have forgotten about. But your state capitol with that ISBN will purchase the book. Only one book, but one book for every county in your respective state. That's how some people become bestsellers in certain instances. And it's a way that an author gets immortalized and their book can get into places that it may not get. Because just because someone publishes a book doesn't mean their book gets everywhere. The audience, please remember this. This is a way to help an author out, but it's another way to enshrine them in a category that not every author gets to. Now, going forward, you've written this book. Life has given you a lot of fruition. That's the best way. That's what I meant to say. Fruition. So you're seeing all the great things that were held back. This is a hard question. Pay homage to 2020. It's a news magazine. You remember it. John Stossel was on there. What's the other people? Elizabeth Vargas was on there later on. Diane Sawyer. The late, great Barbara Walters was on there. So let's do one of these Barbara Walters questions, if you don't mind. Do you mind?
Please.
All right. So you've written this book. You have factorized a part of you that hurt you, a part of you that has told the story of the years from that time till now. You have a future now. You have a future with promise. That promise gives you the right to take the past and dissect it and do whatever you want to do with it. Or you can just do like I do when my hair is really long. I put it in a ponytail and it's behind me. So what's the next step with your story?
That's a great question. I can't put my past in the past. I mean, I'm not attached to it anymore. I'm moving on in life, and I'm tackling new frontiers. But I am continuously learning something about myself from my past. And I'll give you an example. I was in another podcast, and they were asking me about one of the characters. And the first character you meet is this guy, Reuben. And Reuben, you'll learn very quickly at the beginning of the book that Reuben has been incarcerated in a federal prison and has just gotten out. He's 3 weeks out of prison, and he's now in the most chaotic place on the planet, out at Burning Man, and dealing with this culture shift for him, the shock of it, et cetera, et cetera. But one of the things that I realized as I was talking about this character is much like Reuben, going to Burning Man was very much a coming out of the prison experience, because I had put myself in prison emotionally, and it was a place that I was allowed to open up the door and step out of my prison.
Okay.
So my past continues to belch up new lessons all the time.
Okay, so it's not going to be a ponytail behind you. It's going to be in your hair.
It's just going to be free flowing.
Okay, nothing wrong with that. But you're responsible with it, and you know how to handle things. All right, when you're in a room, there's a glass that you can see.
Yep.
The glass is half full or half empty. Most people, it's half empty or half full. What's a glass for you?
Glass is definitely half full, and there's no patting myself on the back for that, because it just seems to be the way I was built. And I'll give you an example. When I was early in the Navy, I remember I was standing on top of a submarine one day with some other guys. We were doing some work, and one of the guys that was doing the work just was complaining about everything. And he felt like he was put down by the man, and he was being kept down, and he had all these examples. And I realized that every one of his examples, I had faced that thing, but the way I had faced it is by turning it into my own opportunity. Whereas he was just seeing them as fences that were keeping him back. So I've always had that kind of, when this new thing comes and it looks like a challenge, or it looks like something that I need to deal with, how am I going to turn this into an opportunity for myself? And that has really served me over the years, and the work that I've done, the relationships that I've had, the people that have been in my life, is how does this become an opportunity, and how does this become a point of contribution to this person I'm in front of, that I can make a difference with them?
Okay. Now, the last question I'll ask, and this one's tough. You wake up and you look in the mirror, and the mirror is the hardest place for everyone to go. Because when we go in the mirror, there's two things we do. we judge ourselves. And we are our harshest critic. Sad to say. No matter what anybody else says, because we both got thick skin probably. And if you don't have thick skin, you've gotten thick skin over the years. I know, because I have myself. What did the mirror tell you this morning?
So I have really been more and more trying to live my life so I can look in the mirror and be okay with that person, be happy, be satisfied. My dad, before I transitioned, I was actually in the process, and it was before I could tell him, my dad passed away. But before he passed away, I remember he said something to me that has really shook me and really been part of my guidance in my life. He said, I knew if I'd known I would live this long, I would have done things different. And I said, you didn't think you'd live this long? He said, no, I thought I'd be dead by 40. And so I didn't have a plan for after that. And I was shocked because here was this man in his 70s, and he was just riddled with regret for his life. And I swore to myself I couldn't do that to myself. But that's kind of that's like the low bar, is don't live a life with regret. But the higher bar to try to achieve is, am I living my life with passion? Am I getting up every day looking forward to what I'm going to accomplish today or what I'm going to be involved with today? Can I look in the mirror and say, I am the person that I would admire when I was younger? And not every day can I say that. I mean, you can ask my current partner. I have many moments when I could have done better. I am willing to learn from those mistakes, own up to them, and then do better next time. And that's been kind of the thing that has continued to push me forward ever since he said that, because I did not want to be that 70-something person just riddled with regret for having not done something different with my life.
And I thank you for that, because that is going to help a lot of people. And I seen it just helped you a moment ago, because you could see a reassurance you gave yourself. So here comes a part of the story inside this story that we're talking about, where I give back to you. Fortitude. You have it. You had it, but you didn't always use it.
I would say that my fortitude early on was purely built on rage. There was nothing that was going to stop me because I was so full of rage. Today, that fortitude comes from having been knocked down a lot of times, but learned that I could stand back up and do something different, something again, something more positive. And it just drives me. Every day I get up and think, who am I going to be for my daughter? Who am I going to be for my friends? Who am I going to be for the people I work with? And is that a better person than I was yesterday? And I try to always answer that question in the affirmative, because who wants to live with that regret?
And accountability gave you responsibility that you're doing now. And once you tie all that together, that's the makeup of you right now. There's way more to you. We could go on for days. But the time that you had that ice axe, you came down off that mountain, from what I have heard today, the responsibility just kept trickling and trickling. And then it bursted out. And for you to accept that and to be willing to share that with complete strangers, I love that. Because not a lot of people would do that.
So there's this ethos of the peaceful warrior. I mean, I was clearly a warrior when I was young, and not a peaceful warrior, but just a warrior. The peaceful warrior is completely transparent, is completely vulnerable. And that is what I reach for today. I don't reach for an accomplishment. I don't reach for, even my legacy, what I'm going to leave, but can I be completely vulnerable, and can I be completely transparent in the world and give people the gift of that vulnerability?
I had to write that down real quick. That is amazing. You may want to make a quote for that. And in closing, I want to tell you thank you for coming on the show. Thank you for opening up your world and making it everyone's world now. And I want to do my best to push this across every medium, in every way I can. So, audience, I'm going to leave the floor with Sarah. And Sarah, what I'd like you to do, give us your mission statement and your commitment to life.
So contribution is the word I would use, and it comes in a couple forms. One is, am I making a difference for someone every day? Am I, by virtue of the things I'm involved with, leaving a durable improvement, something that makes that job, that business, that organization, that community, am I leaving something that's better? And then finally, am I growing? Am I pushing my own envelope from the things that I'm engaged with? And if I do those three things every day, I'm a pretty happy camper no matter what I'm doing.
And I thank you so much for that. So, Sarah Marshall, I'm J.R. Sparrow, and the European lady is going to take us out with that outro. But there's an amazing thing that goes into a podcast. It's the after podcast effect. It's the show notes. Inside the show notes, you will be able to find where you can meet and greet Sarah Marshall across the internet, which is her website. She did state that, the website. And from there, you can get immersed in the books and you can become part of her ecosystem. The thing that I'm going to leave the audience with tonight is this simple thing, and this morning or whenever you listen to the show or watch it, is this one simple thing. No matter what society, life, circumstances, or anything that's handed to you that you can put a negative connotation to, you have a perspective. Your perspective is encompassed in your composition of who you are. And your composition of who you are includes your self-esteem, mannerism, and all that other great stuff that makes you a human being. And in life, what gets lost in translation inside our minds, body, and soul are that composition. And when that happens, it can take you 35 years to figure it out. It can take you 37 years to figure it out. It can take you to your dying breath. A theme that was talked about on here was living in regret. And Sarah clearly wasn't going to live in regret. Sarah knew and knows and is knowing of her composition. It took a little while to get there, but she's here. She's been there. So anyone out there that needs that extra guidance, there's a person in the flesh, there's a person in this audio and in this video that has taken the time to tell you their story. So on that note, I'm JR.
Please follow WV Uncommonplace on Instagram, Tumblr, Twitter, TikTok, where we have some great content, Facebook, LinkedIn. Hit up the merch store at oncommonplace.square.site. Join the email list from the website, and rate, subscribe, and give feedback from your favorite podcatcher. And lastly, thanks for listening, and tune into the next episode.